Hello, Deepsha.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I think I know what the problem was, and I'm so sorry about that. I think there was something on the background, a window on the background that was still running. So, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Deepsha?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we can get this started again.
Perfect. Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, just give me 1 second.
Perfect. I can see you as well.
Okay, but I think I need to promote you to a panelist. Okay. Okay.
All right.
So I think we should be okay. So we're now also live on YouTube, and for those that are on our YouTube channel, I'm so sorry about that. There was just one technical issue that we had to get over and get fixed. So now we're good and live. So hopefully you can all hear us wide and clear. And if you can't, please make sure that you let us know on the chat. Hear us wide and clear. And if you can't, please make sure that you let us know. Okay, so you ready, Deepsha?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry about that. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen very quick. So welcome everyone, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar today. My name is Rani Haroun, and I'm one of the co-founders at High Counselor. So today, we're going to present a day in the life of data and applied scientists with our guest speaker, Deepsha Menghani from Microsoft. The agenda is going to be pretty simple. Let me just share it very quick with everyone here. I think if you guys, where is it? Okay. Okay. So the agenda is going to be pretty simple. We're going to start with a little introduction of High Counselor. And then we'll talk about, we'll have a little introduction with you, from you, Deepsha. And then after that, we'll move essentially to our Q&A. And please don't be shy. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate. The other thing too is at the end we'll have a little gift for those who will stick with us until the end. So please work with please stick with us. Deepsha, at this point, I think since it's already 2:10 and I don't want to take too much of our actual introduction, why don't we get started with your introduction? If you can tell us a little bit about your background, what your professional experience is, and that would be helpful.
Sure. So I started my career in Qualcomm as a software engineer, but mostly in test engineering. And then while moving to US, I did my MBA. My MBA was in marketing, so right after that, I joined Microsoft in the marketing area, where I kind of got a taste of a little bit of data that exists in Microsoft which got me interested in, wow, there's a lot of data work that can be done here. And so after almost 2.5 years of marketing, I decided that I wanted to move to data science. And so I tried a couple of companies outside of Microsoft and within internally as well. And I can talk about that experience with you guys as we go more into the questions, but that's my background. I'm not a developer from a background, but I have learned to code now with trying to move my career to data science.
Okay, thank you, Deepsha. And so I see that I think in your title we used, I guess, data and applied scientist. Is there any difference between, I guess, that title, data and applied scientist, and data science, or is it the same?
So it's slightly different, and this is a relatively newer term that the industry has started. And actually, Lyft has a pretty good article about why they started calling their data science teams data and applied scientists, and how they divided that into two different teams. And I can talk about that. But I would definitely encourage you guys to later go and check out that blog from Lyft. It's a pretty clear distinction that's now coming out in the industry. So there's business analytics teams, there is data and applied scientist teams, and then there's data scientist teams. So usually data scientist teams are the ones that are building the ML models. They're defined more as a research data scientist teams, and they've almost all of them, they've had their MS or PhDs, the ones that I've met. And then data and applied scientists kind of sits in the middle of business analytics and data scientists. So what we do is not just look at the data and say, what is the data looking like, but actually try to make analysis on that data, try to understand based on forecast how we are performing, or give insights to the business stakeholders saying, okay, based on what this data is telling us, and I can give an example. Let's say there are certain customers who are using certain Microsoft products. I don't just tell my business stakeholders how much is each product selling, but I'm able to look at all of the data that's available to me and say, okay, certain features of customers are buying certain kind of products. So based on that, maybe there's this other category of products that we need to spend more resources on. And this other products are performing better than the forecast. So an analysis that could actually help the business decision stakeholder in making a decision that they could not have made just by looking at the data directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this.
I'm just going to add one more thing. Sorry, Ronnie.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to make sure that we loop in the data scientist team as well. So I work pretty closely with the research data scientist team, because once I have done my analysis and I want to build actual regression models on top of it, I do work pretty closely with the research data scientist team as well. So they need to go hand in hand, because the applied data science team has a business understanding along with the analytics, whereas data science team brings in the model expertise.
Okay, thank you, Deepsha. I was just monitoring our YouTube channel here just to make sure that everything is working, and I just noticed that some people, and I don't know if it's still the case, they couldn't hear us. So
Okay.
Hopefully that has been fixed. If not, I just put a comment on the chat box, just asking everyone if they could hear us. So we'll just continue, and hopefully they can hear us.
Sounds good.
So moving on to the next question, can you tell us what is your typical day as a data scientist? What does it look like?
Yeah. So I think I can pretty clearly divide my work into a couple of tasks. One is there's a lot of data that's spread around across Microsoft, and a huge part of it huge part of my day gets spent in knowing and learning where the data exists and how do I pull that data into my analysis. As all of us know, the sexiest part of being a data scientist is cleaning the data, that most of our time gets spent in it, because I would love to say that the data is always clean, but I think at least 60% of my time goes in cleaning the data before I can even get to an analysis. Now that's the first part of my job. The second part that I spend time on is in the actual analysis. The actual analysis is dependent upon a lot of meetings with the business stakeholders, to make sure, just with the help of data, does not have the business context in it, and without the business context, your analysis does not actually make sense to anybody. And the third most part is communication. I think I'm a firm believer on data is only as good as the story you can tell with it. So if you're not able to communicate it properly and constantly, the progress with your stakeholders, then they're not aligned in the journey. So these three are usually the tasks that I'm involved in, but I would say 60 to 80% of my time is spent on cleaning the data and then actually doing the analysis. And in our team, at least, we make sure that once a week, at least 4 hours in our day are blocked just for learning.
Okay, thank you, Chan. Now, moving on to the next question. What are the three differences between data scientists and data analytics?
Right. So as I had touched a little bit on it before, I think it'd be okay if you don't go too much in detail here. But there's a pretty gray line now that's forming between data analysis and at least applied and data scientists. And I feel like data analytics is a pretty good first step for a lot of people before they move into a data scientist space. But there's business analytics, which is the same as data analytics, and the data scientist team. A data scientist is a person who's actually building the modeling and the forecasting of how you're going to perform. And those feature and regression models, they're built with the data science teams. A data analytics team are closer to a applied data science team. You're doing the data analysis by looking at, all right, what is happening with the data, and how do we bring in the first level of business understanding to that analysis. You don't necessarily need a model for every single business question that's asked. So you, as an applied data scientist, need to know what is the right project that needs building a model for the business stakeholders, and then loop them in accordingly. So that's the difference between all three teams, and how they still are pretty reliant on each other in terms of getting the work done and doing complete projects end to end.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for the clarification. So for someone who I guess is just starting his or her career into that industry, what is the typical route to get there?
So I can talk about my failures as well as successes, so that failing and getting rejected is okay as you're trying to get onto this path. I'm only going to talk about my personal journey, because everyone's journey is really dependent on how much effort they put in and what works for them. For me, right before joining this team, my current data science team, I was in marketing, like I said. But before I even could get to the stage of being interview ready, I spent around 3 to 4 months intensely. Like, my working hours were spent in work, and every single non-working hours, including post-work, weekday hours, and weekend hours, in studying and getting up to speed with what is data science, and getting at least some technical expertise that I can put in front of the interview. So that was one part. Building your technical skills is an important part of it. Now, if you don't have an experience, and every single job description you read says they need 4 years of experience, how do you beat that? Like, that's the next question. So the other thing that I had working for me, which can be replaced by something else, and I'll tell you what that something else is. But what worked for me is, I had a few projects in my background where I had done data analysis that I could actually, they weren't public projects, but at least I could share that internally, saying, look, I've worked with data, and I have done this analysis that you can see as a part of my skill. So I'm not starting from zero, even though I've been in marketing. And so if you're looking for a career change, I would encourage you as well to look for many data related projects within whatever team you're in, because every team has some sort of a data. Every team is trying to make some decisions or has some stakeholders. So I would really encourage, try to find wherever data exists and see if you can work with that data and have an outcome that at least you can share internally. Now, what about external hunting? So building a profile, especially if you're doing a career change, is extremely important online. And this is something where I was telling you where I failed, is exactly this part where and I'm still building it, and I would encourage everyone to start building it, which is your public profile in terms of your Git projects. Create a Git repository, place public projects that you do there. If you're genuinely interested in data science and you're learning data science skills from anywhere and you're doing projects, put them in your Git repository as a public link. So which is something that you can, when you're sending an interview request to some company or some individual person, make sure you share those projects that you've done in the past, or share your Git repository link, share your LinkedIn, if you have public papers on LinkedIn that you worked with data on, share that with them so that they know that even though they're looking for experience and you may not have that, you have built an experience by yourself. And no, it doesn't exactly replace a master's or a PhD degree, but it's not necessary. It's the experience ultimately that they count is what you've actually worked on. And the only way to showcase what you worked on is to actually do the work and put it in a public place. That is the journey, like, I think works pretty well for trying to transition into a data science career. I was able to share my work from the past that really helped. And the other things that I was able to share was, like I said, a part of my day-to-day work is understanding business context behind the data and communicating. So you also need to showcase those skills from your current career. And the great thing is you may not be working on data today, but I'm pretty sure you're communicating with someone. So as long as you can showcase those extra skills as well that you need to be a successful data scientist, I think you should be in a good position.
Okay, I think one quick question from the audience.
Yeah.
I think since you mentioned that your background was in marketing,
Yeah.
So someone was just wondering if actually Microsoft did teach you most of the data analytics, or is this something that you learned on your own on the job, like you said?
I learned it on my own. Right now, I'm in a team where I have a lot of people around me to learn from, but I had to learn a lot of the analytics on my own because I wanted to work with the data, and those data skills weren't exactly in marketing. Not a lot of people know that data skills. And there's no formal training in marketing that you're given for data scientists. If you're in a data science team, you can receive a lot of good formal training, but not in the marketing team. I went through a lot of online resources to get myself up to speed with R and SQL. Now, not all the resources were good. So I think I can either share now, or I don't know if there's going to be a question, Ronnie, later. But the two resources that really, really helped me, one for SQL was, I think, Sadie Lawrence's course on Coursera. It was one of the better SQL courses that I'd taken. And the other one for R, it was Matt Dancho's Business Science University. I luckily came across that course because I'm signed up to a bunch of R Studio email threads when I started learning R. And so I came across that course, and I think those two courses were pretty much a game changer for me. So I did spend a lot of time on that courses, and then I came across these courses to get myself properly up to speed with the technology.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually one of the question from the audience was the tools and resources. So you touched on, I guess, the tools and resources that you used in the past, basically to get started. But is
Yeah.
there something, do you still have tools and resources that you're still using today just to keep yourself up to date and making sure that you're keeping up with the industry?
Yeah, so there's a few that there's constantly good books that keep coming out of this R studio community. I focus a lot of my time on learning R, and the resources I constantly use is Twitter. It's surprisingly extremely valuable in data science job that I never thought Twitter was in any other job I've had before, because there's a lot of influencers on Twitter for data science, and I usually follow our community, but I'm pretty sure there's a good Python community as well. Hadley Wickham, who works in our studio, I constantly read his books. There's a few courses online that I do on Data Camp. Matt Dancho from Business Science University that I talked about, he constantly comes up with new courses and webinars. I make sure I attend almost all of them and start any course the day he launches. I just take that course. And so this is the one super important thing that if you're looking to move into data sciences, the day you stop learning is the day you stop growing, and that day you don't, like, you're no more a data scientist, because the technology is changing so fast. New things are getting introduced so fast that the basic level of data science is not sufficient anymore. So you have to constantly continue to learn, and these are the resources I rely on nowadays to continue to learn.
Okay, great. And I just saw, I think someone was wanted to for us to post the exact title of those courses. So if you can, after this, I'll follow up with you. You can give those to me, and I will share them by email to all the attendees here. I will send you the exact course names and where you can find them. So I'll do that after. And quick question, and I know you touched a little bit on that, but I was just wondering if you had to put, I guess, some kind of priority for someone who's just starting in the job application process in terms of, resume. That's where it starts. So I know that you said to basically make sure that you are, even if you don't have to do the experience, you still can find, make sure that you're coming up with something that basically got you involved either in a business, working with the business, with data, but can you give us a little, I would say, more pointers in terms of what would be the 3 or 5 things that that should absolutely be present in a resume, ideal resume?
Yeah, so your GitHub link and the languages that you're most comfortable with. Don't put a language you're not comfortable with just for the sake of that. And a lot of tech companies, unfortunately, it's not the best process, but kind of in an automated manner go through resumes. So make sure you understand what kind of terms their job description has that they want you to do. And make sure that your resume is reflecting those exact terminologies, if you're able to do it, if it applies to your background, and if you are indeed actually able to get data inferences and data insights from the past, then use those words, especially if they're present in the job description. Most of us usually tend to just like build our resume once and then throw it out for every single job. But make sure that you read the job descriptions very specifically. And in this process, like I have faced rejection quite a bit during the initial applications, but even if you're able to get a first or second round of interview with any company, any team, just even if you're not like 100% sure, make sure you still use that interview as a stepping stone to say, okay, so this is what an interview looks like, and this is what's expected out of me, and this is the terms that they were looking for. Make sure after an interview, whether it goes good or bad, always ask for feedback through either the HR person or the person who interviewed directly, whatever that company is comfortable with, and be okay with hearing that this is a set of skills that you didn't have. That helped me a lot during the rejection phase, actually. So I knew what I needed to work on. And so in terms of resume, make sure you have the Git profile available, the public Git profile. Make sure your terminologies match the job description of that specific company, and the technical skills that you're actually capable of and you're proficient in versus just has dabbled in.
Great. Another great question from the audience. This one is interesting. So, and it's a very good question, actually. So this person is wondering what keeps you motivated in this field with all the data cleaning and the technicalities of data and coding. Because she said that she's wondering, it can be probably pretty dense sometimes. So do you have like a secret to share for, and I'm sure you also probably sometimes get, you know, it's a lot of work. So what keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think that end goal is what keeps me motivated, because, and that is a great question. I do feel like I'm suffering through cleaning data every single time I'm doing it. And I do wish every single time that the data was just clean from the get-go. And if I spend 60% of the time on that, I'm just thinking of the amazing information I could get out of that data in the end is what keeps me going. And you do have to spend a lot of time in front of the computer. So if you are a people person, this is something that you need to know for yourself. If that, and this is what my manager told me as well when I went through all the interviews, and he wanted to be sure I'm ready to join this team, was in marketing. I was constantly in meetings. It was just a people job. Managing people was just my every single second, which means not a lot of time was spent in front of the computer staring at the screen waiting for my analysis to run and cleaning data. So you need to be comfortable with that if you're going to join a data science team, or if that's what you want for your future. Again, remember the end goal. Be interested in the business. The business question is what's extremely interesting, and if you're not interested in that business question, it's kind of hard to do the data analysis and be excited about the data analysis behind it.
Thank you, Deepsha. So we kind of touched, I guess, on the resume. How about the interview? And please feel free to share as much as you can without obviously getting into things that you cannot share, obviously.
Yeah.
So if you can just help us understand what are the most typical, I guess, interview questions that someone really has to nail on the interview to land the job.
Yeah, I can talk about a few company interviews that I went through. I won't name the company, so it's okay. But the interviews were pretty different for different teams. But the most general format was your first part is going to be statistics. They wanna, and by statistics, I don't mean huge mathematical equations. I just mean the basic statistics that you need to know for analyzing your data. For example, what if your data is heavily skewed towards your top biggest customers, and those kind of questions. So what do you do with that data? And those kind of questions. So the first set of interviews, almost all of them, was based on knowing if you have outliers, how do you handle them, and statistical questions. There's a lot of good resources, again, available online that you can go through to make sure you're ready for that part of the interview. The second part of the interview was pretty team dependent. If they were very heavy SQL users, which our team is a heavy SQL user, and it's actually also an Azure Data Explorer user. I had never used Azure Data Explorer in my previous jobs or even learned it ever, but I had tried to use SQL before. Like I said, there's a good course I was able to do. So some of the companies also had this round of SQL interviews if they were a good heavy user of SQL. And then the third interview was usually in terms of a case study. They would want to give you a business case study. They'd give you a bunch of data, and they'd want you to make sense of that data, and then also be able to make a business decision or a business advice to your stakeholder based on what you saw and analyzed in that data. Except the SQL interviews, most of the other interviews were technology agnostic, so you didn't have to use any specific language. You could just analyze the data even in Excel if you wanted. So really the idea was for them to understand if you are good at business insights, if you're good at just not looking at data and telling what it is, but actually being able to make an insight from that data. If you have a technical expertise and you're able to use that to do a faster insight, obviously that's a plus. I used R most of the places. In fact, I'm more comfortable in R than I'm in SQL at a lot of data manipulation techniques. So most of my time I used R more than anything else, but that's really up to you and up to what the team requires as a general skill that they're looking for. So technical skills, communication skills, and business skills. Those three skills are what most companies will test in an interview. The good news is it's pretty hard to find individuals who are good at all these three things, which means that if you're able to get up to speed in technical, and that's the best part, you can get up to speed in the technical aspects because it's a self-learning process. And the other two things, if you've used the other two things like business context or communication in your previous job, you can really highlight that as your strength. You can say, okay, the technical skills, I may not be there yet. I can build that up as I go because anybody can learn technical stuff. But these other things that I've used in my previous job make me a good candidate for it. So make sure in an interview you're able to talk about your strengths and not just look at what you're missing out on.
Great. Quick question from the audience. So this person is wondering what is more important? Is it to have a particular set of skills or many years of experience? What if an employer has between those two to pick? Which one would he pick first?
I know this is an answer that probably everybody hates, but it depends. I got rejected by a few companies based on my experience. Like it was just, all right, you don't have experience, period. But for some people, it was the skills that mattered. So it would go a little bit farther than just my experience. At the end of the day, my skills were just not good enough. You want to be able to join a team that values your skills and also values the time that they give to developing those skills, because I think that's super important. In my interview process, my manager was super clear on the fact that he told me that technically, because of a lack of experience, he understands that I'm probably not where he needs me to be, but he also believes in learning. He believes in the learning on the go. So make sure that if a company just values experience, then it's probably not the best to join, and it's going to be difficult to anyway try to go through those interview rounds. Make sure you try to understand how the company talks about their data science practice and how much they value learning.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question from the audience. So about the interview. So just wondering how you prepared. Essentially, if you had a specific technique, specific strategy, did you get someone coaching you to prepare for the interview? I think that's one question. And the follow-up question after that is once, I guess prior to even getting to the interview, what was your strategy for applying to jobs?
Yeah, so my strategy for applying to jobs was one, try to apply to jobs that are newly put out, so that they're like relatively new in dates, so that you're one of the first few candidates in the pool. That's a kind of a tactic, not exactly a technical thing. The other tactic, and Ronnie, I want to come back to your first part of the question was
the interview. How did you prepare for the interview?
How did I prepare for the interviews? You know what? You actually, in the question itself, you gave a great idea. Practice with somebody. I didn't. It wasn't the best process. Like I said, there's definitely better ways to go about building those skills than I used. But I used my interviews as a practice interview, some of them. So that's how I treated my rejections. Like if I didn't get it, I was like, all right, that was good practice. So that's how I practiced. Regarding applications to job, every single person I contacted, I made sure that there is a link available to the work that I've done as a data scientist, or the data work that I've done in the past, not as a data scientist, that I could talk about and tell them, like, this is the reason I think I'd be a good fit for you. So most of the companies have cover letter requirements as well. Make sure you submit a cover letter for that company, for that team, and tell them why that specific company, why that specific kind of data is it that interests you, and then make sure you have the online link. So that was pretty much my tactic. Reach out to, it's a numbers game, unfortunately. The more number of people you reach out to, the fewer out of that percentage would respond back. And then the ultimate goal is to make good connections. Even if you're not able to move into a job right away, make sure you understand what are the skills you're missing that need to be built to ultimately get there. It's not, moving into data science is not even a 1 month process, especially if you're making a career change. You need to treat, if that is an ultimate goal, you do need to treat it as a long-term thing. And when I started on this journey, I was like, all right, it's not, I don't want to move into data science this month, but I want to start building the skills that would eventually help me move into data science. So make sure you're treating it as a long-term game, if that's where you want to end up.
Great. Thank you. Touching on, and I guess once you've landed the job, I think for those out there that want to learn more about, I guess what it's like to be a data scientist. I think you kind of touched on that when we talked about the work that's required, and sometimes can be a lot of work, to clean up the data. Just wondering, what are the, I guess, the most typical challenges that you run on a daily basis as a data scientist?
How many? Okay. Let's start at, I think the biggest challenge, like I said, is clean data. The second biggest challenge is alignment of stakeholders. As a data scientist, as a data and applied scientist, you're not, almost always, I guess, in our team, you're not going to be the person who is also doing the data analysis and who is also then responsible for executing the insights to make sure that the business grows based on the data analysis you do. That's a different team. And so if you're not able to align the other business stakeholders to the kind of analysis that you're doing, and if they don't understand the extremely complex words you're using of data science that you did, it's probably going to be hard for them to believe what you're doing. So I think one of the challenges is to kind of, I don't want to call it dumb it down, but really be able to tell a story that aligns with your business stakeholder, that they understand, while still underneath the hoods, being able to do the complex analytics that's needed. And so that's the one challenge. And the second, like I talked about, data cleaning.
Okay, great. That makes perfect sense. So those are the challenges. And can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, what you like the most about your job today? What really, gets you excited, to go to the office when you go to the office?
Yeah. So at least in my current job, I'm constantly, it's slightly unhealthy, but I'm constantly, like, even after work, if there's a data problem I'm trying to solve, I'm constantly still thinking about like how to solve it. In my mind, it's going on in the background, which kind of tells me that that's when I know I'm enjoying the work, versus I'm not enjoying my work every single day. And I don't think there's any single job exists that you're enjoying every single day. If you do, go get it. But in my current job, I think most of the days I feel good about coming to work when I'm completely aligned with my manager and with my stakeholders. So whenever you're selecting a team or a company, make sure you're completely aligned with a manager. It's as they're selecting you as much as you're selecting them. So make sure it's a manager you can work with. It's someone you can align on the kind of projects that you work on. If it's a problem that I'm doing that does not have a lot of business impact, I'm not going to enjoy it. So this is another thing that you want to check and during your interview process, that what is the kind of business problems you're going to be working on? And is it just going to be analytics for fun, or is it something that's going to actually have an impact on the growth of a business? So what excites me today is if I am able to do an analysis properly, and if I'm able to give insights to the right stakeholders, they're going to be able to make thousands of millions or whatever business impact their team size is, they're able to make that impact. And then I feel like I had a part to play in making that impact. The other thing that gets me excited, and this is something that could be completely different for different people, so this is something you need to know about yourself, whether you'd like it or not, is that I work on different projects. Because I'm not associated with a single product. I'm not, like for instance, in marketing, I was for 2.5 years, I was on a single product, and I had like completely in-depth knowledge about that continued to build. I was the subject matter expertise for that. But if you're in data science and you're working with multiple different stakeholders, you're not exactly an SME on the product, but you're an SME on multiple projects and the multiple data analytics. So if you're a person who likes to be a single product person, which a lot of people are, then you're probably either looking at product marketing or product management, where you can actually do the analytics and then you can make the impact on the product yourself. So if I get bored of a product, I can I can go switch to another data science project. That's how I look at it, and that's what keeps me interested, because I'm answering different questions every day.
That's great. That's actually a very good segue to my next question, which is essentially the different career path that you have as a data scientist. Whether, I guess it's like you said, like you started, answering whether it's something that you enjoy doing and you want to move up, or if it's not something that you enjoy so much and you want to make, you want to make a change. What are the different options?
Yeah. So you do, and this is an advice that I got from a lot of people when I was moving into data science. Because when I asked them the questions who've been in data science for a while, when I asked them the question, where do you see yourself heading? The reason I cannot answer that question for myself is because I've just started on this journey. So I haven't done any career change after this, but I can tell from other people's experiences that it's kind of a narrow path. If you're a data scientist, you're kind of dedicating yourself to a path of at least being in the data field, which is a narrow but a pretty exciting path, considering the direction the technology is heading, considering the direction that almost all companies are eventually going to need to understand their data. It's a pretty exciting path. But what that path looks like is you're an individual contributor, you're doing the analysis yourself. You can either then eventually go to higher studies and go into research, or you could continue to build a bigger team where you're managing a team of data scientists, you're managing a team of data analytics, and then eventually you get to the point where you can build your own data analytics team for a company that hasn't had a data analytics team. So and I think that's the most exciting part, is we think that data is everywhere, but a lot of companies are on that journey yet. So depends upon what excites you, how long do you want to stay an individual contributor, become a manager, or start your own data team in a company that's never done it. or in a part of a company that hasn't done it yet, what paths do you want to take? The other path I've seen a few of the data scientists around me go towards is products related to data. So they moved to product management teams where they're actually responsible for building a product that is related to data, so they understand what goes into a product that's used for data analysis. So that's another path I've seen other people do. More people are in the former path than the latter path. But I think, again, if you're able to make a career switch to data science, you're pretty easily should be able to use the same recipe to make a switch to something else if you think that eventually you need to be somewhere else.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just looking at our channel here just to see if there is any more question. We're actually approaching the top of the hour. So is there any one, I guess based on what we've covered so far, is there any last advice, any tips, anything that we haven't covered that you would like to, I guess, share with our audience here?
Yeah, I think there was one question we had talked about earlier in the email, which was R versus Python. A lot of data scientists, when they're starting on the journey, they are Googling or Binging constantly, what should I learn, R or Python? It's a pretty contentious debate. So without getting into the debates of what language is better, because I really think both of the languages have their own strengths, I want to kind of make you aware of what our team's mixtures look like. There are folks in our team who are pretty in-depth knowledgeable in Python. There are folks like me who are more comfortable with R and who started the journey on R. There's a lot of people who kind of do a pretty end-to-end analysis in SQL and Excel, and they're able to get the pretty good same amount of job done. So I think I can talk about why I picked R, and this is like I said, totally personal upon what is the kind of language that you're comfortable learning. I learned R because, not coming from a developer background, it actually felt easier for me to pick up in the way that the language has been built. So that was easier for me to pick up. And there was a pretty good Twitter community that is very supportive of each other, which I loved about R, and I fell in love with it. So I've just been on that path. Eventually, I feel like I would need to digress and make sure that I'm giving a sufficient amount of learning to Python as well if I want to continue to grow in a data science space. So I would say start with the language and then try the other language as well, see what you're comfortable with and see what you want to go in depth in. There's a lot of unhealthy debate that I'm not really privy to in that.
We'll leave that for another
Yeah.
webinar. It sounds like it's going to be a long discussion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I think we are at the end of the time that we dedicated for this webinar. Let me just wrap things up very quick, and thank you again so much, Deepsha. So like I mentioned at the beginning, let me just take you here. Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, essentially what High Counselor can help you with is find a coach and a company insider who can increase your chances to land a job at your dream company. So if you know essentially the value of knowing someone on the inside, then you will understand how High Counselor can help. So no more spending hours of browsing through hundreds, of LinkedIn profiles to find someone to connect with, and no more feelings of indebtedness because you've asked someone to help you learn about their company. So essentially, from your company, from your computer, or from your mobile, you can easily connect with someone and who can essentially coach you and help you understand what it's like to get a job at their company or at a different company in that role. So I mentioned at the beginning a little gift. So sometimes in the next 24 hours, you will receive a little survey about our webinar today. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. Things like this happen, so we'll make sure that this doesn't happen again. But what we want to do is we want to offer you one free session with any of our counselors on our platform for the first 3 attendees who fill out the survey. That's up to $100 value. So please do not. So if you want to try it out, if you want to try Hack Counselor out, please take out the fill out the survey and give us some feedback on this webinar. Also, if you like what we've just covered, we do this pretty regularly. So here, this is hopefully you can all see my screen here. This is a screenshot with our YouTube channel. So we do a lot of those webinars on almost weekly basis now. So just subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep you up to date on our webinars. One more thing is our platform. So it's called highcounselor.com. If you want to also sign up for our newsletter, because I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning because of the technical difficulties we had. Didn't really have much time to spend on introducing our platform. But one thing that we do is constantly evolving the platform so that we come up with services and things that really help the job seeker with his quest to find a job. And lastly, I think hopefully Deepsha will have you join on our platform as a counselor. So for all our audience here, if you want to connect with her, hopefully she will join us soon. If not, there are a lot of other counselors who can, I'm sure, also help you if you have questions about the data scientist role, or how to essentially how to increase your chances to get a job in that industry. So hopefully that covers it all. Hopefully you learned something today. Like I said, if not, please fill out the survey and let us know what we can do better for next time. And thank you again so much, Deepsha, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you on our next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.